Oh hi. Brussels, the capital of Belgium and the Bruxelles capital region. In Brussels, institutions of the French and Flemish communities in Flanders, the headquarters of the European Union, office of NATO, the Secretariat of Benelux countries were placed. It isn't necessary to confuse the city. Commune. Brussels. Stade Brussels. Ville de Bruxelles, Bruxellesville. With the Bruxelles capital region. It is mentioned since 794 as Bruxelles with the instruction that the settlement is located between swamps. From there is a toponym. From Flemish brock, swamp, cella, housing, that is, the settlement at the swamp, that rather widely meets in the European toponymy. Modern French and Walloon, Bruxelles. Brussels, outdated option, Bruxelles. Flemish, Brussels. Brussels. In Russian-speaking tradition, the Flemish form Brussels is taken. Together with other 18 communes, the city of Brussels forms the Bruxelles capital region, which is actually the uniform city with the population honoring 2 million people, though the population of the commune Brussels makes about 150,000 people. Usually the name Brussels is distributed to all district. The commune Brussels has the irregular shape consisting of 3 parts. Wide northern, narrow central and narrower southern. A northern part of Brussels includes the region of Laken, where the royal residence of the same name is located. Till 1921 Laken was the independent commune. The historical kernel of the city forms a pentagon of the boulevards laid on the place of the former defensive works. Southern prominence, Avenue Louise. Brussels stands on the Seine River, however within the city that is almost not visible as it was blocked by the Belgian engineers under the leadership of Henri Essoury in the period of urbanization. The second half of the 19th century. Climate of Brussels, moderate sea. The sea air masses which are formed over the North Sea, which is in relative proximity, cause small amplitudes of daily and annual temperature and high relative air humidity. The hottest months are July and August with an average temperature of 17.0 C, the coldest, January with an average minimum in 2.5 C. Average annual temperature is 9.7 C. A sunshine number of hours in a year -1585. For sea climate, typically large amount of rainfall. So in a year in Brussels 821 of rainfall, the greatest number. On 79. In November and December drop out. The name of the city comes from the Nederlandse words broek, swamp, and cella, settlement, and designates literally the settlement on the swamp. The basis of Brussels belongs to times quite remote. On a legend, Brussels was founded in the 6th century by Saint Gaderick, a Saint Jerry. However, the first mention of the settlement of Bruxelles occurs only in 996 in the Diploma Otona Valikogo. From 977 to 979 years, the Duke of the Lower Lorraine Charles I constructed the fortress and a chapel on the island on the Seine River that became the first step in development of the city. The cathedral was devoted to Saint Gudula, the patroness of Belgium. In the 11th century, the first city wall was built. Since the beginning of the 12th century, Brussels was the residence of dukes of the Lower Lorraine and Brabant. In 1361, the Duke John III broadened the city and strengthened strengthenings. In 1430, the Duke Burgundian Philip III d'Aubry inherits the Duchy of Brabant and is Brussels by the capital of Burgundy. At this time there is a construction of a town hall and the first buildings on the Grand Place. There is a blossoming of economy. Sculptors, carpet makers and jewelers locate in the city, including artists Peter Sr. Bruegel and Roger van der Weyden find a haven in Brussels. In 1477, Philip d'Aubry's granddaughter, Maria Burgundskaya, marries future emperor of the Sacred Roman Empire Maximilian I at the expense of what Brabant is passed under board by Gabsburg. Their daughter Margarita Avstrijskaya temporarily transfers the residence to Mechelen, but after 1531 Brussels becomes the capital of Burgundy again. After Charles V's death during government of his son Philip II, the most part of modern Belgium becomes a part of the southern Netherlands. At Philip there is a revolt of the minding Spanish governors. During government of the Spaniard Duke Alba, Protestants were cruelly pursued. In July 1568 in Brussels, leaders of noble opposition of Columns Egmont and the Columns Horn were publicly executed. Repressions led to the fact that the intellectual elite began to leave the city, generally ran to Amsterdam. That in turn led to economic decline of Brussels. On the Westphalian World, which put an end to war in 1648, a northern part of the Netherlands was recognized as independent while the southern part together with Brussels remained under control of Spaniards. In the second half of the 17th century at Louis XIV, France tried to reach an ascendant position in Europe. The French troops won Henan and the Western Flanders. In 1695 Bruxelles, the Grand Place, for 3 days was shot with artillery pieces and almost completely destroyed. On the Rijksweekske World of 1697 the French had to leave the Belgian territories. During War for the Spanish Inheritance, 1701-1714. Domination over the southern Netherlands. At the same time and over Brussels, was adopted by representatives Gabsburg from Austria. On the Rastadske World of 1714 Brussels passed to Austria. In 1789 by means of the Brabant Revolt Gabsburg it is possible to achieve for a short time independence of domination during Joseph II's government, while in 1794 territories were occupied by troops of the French Republic. The French domination was ended in 1815 after defeat of Napoleonic troops in the Battle of Waterloo, which happened in 15 came to the south from Brussels. On the Vienna Congress 1814-1815 it was decided to unite the southern Netherlands with northern under the power of Willem I. The liberal elite of the Catholic southern Netherlands, which was focused on France linguistically, culturally and politically, and also Catholic clergy, felt restrained in area of government, education and economic development in comparison with mainly Protestant Nederlands north. After a while the Belgian Revolution leads to separation of Belgium from the United Kingdom of the Netherlands and to formation of the Belgian Kingdom. The most powerful powers of the time, England, Prussia, Austria and Russia, were interested in peaceful resolution of the conflict and declared independence of the new state at the London Conference of 1830. Brussels becomes the capital of the kingdom, and Leopold I, the first king of Belgium with the form of government constitutional monarchy. thanks to the status of the capital of the state and economic recovery of Belgium during an industrialization era. The 19th century. Brussels becomes more and more attractive place. The population grows in high gear, not least at the expense of immigrants from Wallonia and France. The historical kernel of the city unites with the former rural communes in conglomerate, new quarters grow, Sena consists in a pipe. At this time such buildings as the monumental Palace of Justice, the Exchange, the Royal Palace, the Triumphal Arch and the well-known buildings in modernist style are under construction. For example, Victor Ort's buildings. In 1900 the construction of the sea harbor and expansion and deepening of the channel going to the Rupel River is undertaken. In 1910 in Brussels there was a World Fair. How some departments strongly suffered during heavy fire in July 1910, but, thanks to vigorous measures, it was succeeded to bring quickly an exhibition into a good view again. Though Belgium also fell a victim of aggressive policy of Germany during both world wars, Brussels wasn't subjected to considerable destructions. Thanks to it the architecture and streets of Brussels till 60th years, and partially and today, remain the same, as well as at the time of foundation of the city. However, it was already in the 30s carried out rail messages between northern and central stations through the downtown. The old conflict between the Flemish, Nederlandozichny, and Walloon, French-speaking, population leads to the fact that in 1932-1938 Brussels becomes bilingual. Names of streets, stations of public transport and municipalities are duplicated in 2 languages. Under the influence of Wallonia, which was more developed at the time, the city more and more is Frenchified, the Dutch prevailing earlier fades into the background. Also in architecture the French style dominates. After World War II Brussels wins the increasing international value. In 1958 the European Economic Community, the predecessor of the European Union, locates here. The same year in Brussels the World Fair to which Atomium was constructed took place. In 1967 from Paris NATO moves to Brussels. The law issued in 1953 for which expenses for demolition of old houses are paid with the state negatively affects appearance of the city. And fairly large number of old houses and quarters communicates, and the received territories are built up with skyscrapers. Some architects consider that Brussels more suffered from modernization in the 60s than from wars. The similar modernization which is followed by Massachusetts' demolition of historical quarters received the name Brusselization. Besides, formation of a ghetto and settling of poor families of immigrants to the central quarters differing in earlier rich cultural traditions became line characteristic of New Brussels. On March 22, 2016 in Brussels there were acts of terrorism. Population 1806-73928, 1839-8279, 1846-123,874, 1856-152,828, 1880-162,498, 1900-183,686, 1910-177,078, 1920-154,801, 1930-200,433, 1947-184,838, 1970 161,080, 1980 143,957, 1990 136,706, 2000 133,859, 2004 141,312, 2008 148,873. In the territory of the city of Brussels 179,277 persons. 2018. Live at population density 5497 people/km. Together with other 18 communes of the Bruxelles capital region, agglomeration forms the biggest, and at the same time one of the most densely populated. The city of the Benelux countries with the population of card people. Most quickly, the population of Brussels increased in the period of an urbanization in the beginning of the 20th centuries. In one century the population increased twice, from, in 1830 up to 200,433 people in 1930. The peak of population was passed in 1930, since then the population of the city decreased, and in the last 30 years remains at the level of card people with small fluctuations. In 2007 the coefficient of birth rate made 17.4, mortality rate -8.8. This natural increase of the population was +8.6, and the general +17. One that is quite high rate for Europe. Its sex composition of the population of the city is uniform, -50.18% of men and 49.82% of women live in Brussels. A half of all Bruxelles population. 51.6%. We aren't married/are unmarried. Since the beginning of the 20th century, and especially from his second half, indigenous people of Brussels, generally francophones, actively moved to the sleeping suburban municipalities which are a part of the Nederlanderzijdsche province Flemish Brabant. The free quarters of the old city natives of third world countries and the former French and Belgian colonies, Congo occupy generally Morocco, Turkey and so forth. Flemings very sharply react to process of egalization both Brussels and all Bruxelles periphery. Between the French and Nederlands communities not one decade the sharp conflicts take place. Attempts of a de-excavation of Brussels weren't crowned with success yet. Because of placement in Brussels of institutions of the European Union, NATO and other international organizations, more than a quarter of the population. 27.1% of the city are foreigners. Because of Massachusetts immigration of various groups of the population to the city as from other regions of Belgium, and from abroad, the main division of the population in Brussels takes place in language, but not in the ethnic plane. All population conditionally is divided into Francophones, Nederlandophone and Allophones, the majority of which is inclined to assimilation on French-speaking Wednesday. The Bruxelles Capital District is the only officially bilingual region of the country. In bodies of administration, the French and Netherlands languages are recognized as officially equal. Besides, in the capital and regions adjacent to her, many other languages of recent immigrants have distribution. Most of the population of the city, 56% on polls of 2006, considers native French, about 7% Dutch, other 37% speak two and more languages depending on a situation, establishment, quarter, etc. The role of a lingua franca is played by French, about 96% of the population of the city own them. Most of residents of Brussels profess Catholicism and Protestantism. Also professed religions are the Judaism and Islam. In Brussels, the set of cult constructions is located: Catholic, Bruxelles Cathedral, Notre Dame de Laeken, Saint Church of Alice, Saint Church of Teresa Evelskaya and others. And Protestant, St. Andrew's and Church, Augustinian Temple and Holy Trinity Cathedral. And there is a cathedral, mosque and Orthodox churches: Saint Job the Long-Sufferings Church, Temple of the Saint Healer Panalaman and Saint Nicholas the Wonderworker. Brussels, the largest economic center of the country. Economic growth of the Belgian capital was promoted by the central geographical location and the fact that here such international organizations as the UN and NATO were placed. On DDD volume per capita. Euro. Brussels is in the third place among the European cities after Luxembourg and the central London. The greatest profit is made by gastronomy. In April 2007 in the city there were more than 2,000 restaurants. And the tertiary sector of economy. The fields of mechanical engineering releasing the industrial equipment are in addition developed. In the city a large number of financial institutions was placed. In Brussels numerous lines of automobile communications of the country meet. The highway network is similarly devised to the French road network. Like the Persian Boulevard Peripheric, in Brussels there is Ring Highway R to which roads from all directions meet. All network of highways is well lit. Because of big traffic congestion at large intersections, the considerable part of roads was transferred under the earth. So, not only direct sites, but also forks and even traffic lights underground are hidden. One of tunnels conducts directly from the highway in east part of the city in a quarter where institutions of the EU are located. As of 2007 in Brussels about 800 private firms operators of the taxi work. The total number of cars of the taxi minus 1,200, worked on them 3,200 drivers. In the city there were 633 taxi stands. All private firms submit to Directorate of the Taxi of the Ministry of the Bruxelles Capital Region. Taxi services work within the Bruxelles Capital Region of Belgium and also in the next suburbs. All operators of the taxi apply a uniform tariff system. All cars taxi of Brussels have on a roof the shining sign, with the inscription taxi red letters on a white background and the drawing of a yellow iris. A symbol of Brussels. Cars of the taxi are painted, as a rule, in white or black color. Brussels is served by 2 international airports. Brussels Aventum-12 came to the northeast from Brussels in the commune of the same name. Brussels Charleroi and Charleroi-50 came to the south of the capital. Marine transport. The port of Brussels with an annual turnover of 7.85 million tons is one of the largest in Belgium. The Brussels Scheldt Channel connects him to the Scheldt River and thus to the port of Antwerp and the North Sea. The Charleroi-Brussels Channel carries out communication with Wallonia. The largest stations of Brussels, Northern, Central and Southern, are connected among themselves by the North-Southern Tunnel. Trains of the international message arrive usually to the southern station where the message with Paris, Amsterdam, Cologne, Train tallies TFIs. And London Eurostar is adjusted. The Brussels-Luxembourg station was originally intended for communication of buildings of the organizations of the EU, however recently is even more often used also by ordinary citizens. The network of public transport consists of 4 lines of the subway, 3 lines of the pre-subway, underground tram lines, 18 tram lines and 50 bus routes. All stations and stops carry names on Netherlands and in French languages. An operator of public transport in Brussels is Stip/MIV. The system of the subway consists of 4 lines: 1, 2, 5 and the average distance between stations makes 650 meters. Lines 1 and 5 pass from the east on the west and have the general site in the downtown. Line 2 is ring in the form of the pentagon, repeating lines of a historical kernel of Brussels. Besides the subway, there are several partially underground tram lines, the pre-subway, including 3 main. 3, 4 and 7. The most important of lines connects the northern station to Ushny. City transport works till 0:30, night routes. Except bus and line. Work only on the weekend, the ticket for them is slightly more expensive than in the afternoon. Fare by the taxi in Brussels is quite high. Brussels is connected with suburbs by trains N/Zuid, numerous bus routes of Stip/MIV, D-Line Tech and tram routes of Stip/MIV No. 4, 19, 97, 44, 39. For improvement of railway communication in 2004, the decision on reconstruction of network of suburban Réseau Express regional/Bus-like ExpressNet Express electric trains on an example of the Parisian network was made. The network had to be brought into operation in 2012, but because of numerous delays this date was postponed for 2017. Throughout several centuries in Brussels, the conflict between French language and Flemish societies took place thanks to what 2 territories developed separately, every one with the cultural, architectural and economic features. In the downtown in architecture, medieval houses in Flemish style, in particular, in style of Flemish Baroque and Brabant Gothic style prevail. The most striking example, the architectural complex of Grand Place Square, created in the 16th-18th centuries. At the end of the 19th century, the dominating position was adopted by the Walloon French-speaking community. Therefore, the majority of structures of the 19th-20th centuries were executed in the French style. One of founders of modernist style with his smooth unusual forms, Victor Horta studied in the Belgian Academy of Arts in Brussels and after the end of training began to transform the city. 4 houses on the Project Horta were entered in the list of World Heritage Sites: Edmund Tassel's house, Museum Horta, House Salvi, House van het Veld. Other example from the World Heritage List, the Stocklet Palace, built at the beginning of the 20th century by the Vienna architect Joseph Hoffmann. During blossoming of an Art Nouveau, the city actively expanded, therefore many Bruxelles suburbs can brag of architecture in modernist style. Ixelles, Etterbeek, Schaerbeek and St. Giles are most remarkable in this plan of the commune. After the end of World War I, popular is a style of Art Deco representing synthesis of a modernist style and neoclassicism. Some buildings were executed in this style. For example, the architecture of a Basilica of Sacred Heart is mixture of Art Deco and a Neo-Gothic style. However, Brussels remained the capital of an Art Nouveau. In the 1960th, the 70th years, thanks to the long payment of demolition of old buildings by the state, automobilization and moving of the European institutions to Brussels, many historical constructions and also the whole quarters underwent demolition. On their place, new high-rise buildings grew from concrete and glass. So, during laying of the Underground Railroad between northern and southern stations, the centre of Brussels was built up with modern office buildings. The part of the quarter of Marola was cleared away for the Palace of Justice, the Palace of the People. One of masterpieces of the founder of an Art Nouveau, Victor Hort, was also destroyed. On the place of the destroyed northern quarter, the Belgian ministries were constructed. For institutions of the European Union in east part of the city, the European Quarter was built. Now, at reorganization of historical buildings, the facadism, preservation of a facade with full reconstruction of the rest of the building practices. The heart of the city is the Grand Place/Grote Markt, the area 110 m long and 68 m wide. She is surrounded by the houses built in the 17th century. Everyone has the name and everyone belonged to one certain guild. So, for example, She-Wolf occupied the House Guild of Shooters from Onions. The House Cot was built in 1697 by Guild of Producers of Oils and Fats. Some houses, such as Oak, Young Fox, differ in quite simple architecture. On the square there is also a city hall, town hall, representing a masterpiece of Gothic architecture. The construction of the Bruxelles town hall was conducted in 3 stages. The left wing, longer, was constructed in 1402 by Jacob van Tynen. Right, it is completed in 1445 by the unknown architect. In 1450 the building was topped with a 90-meter water with a statue of the Archangel Michael, the patron of Brussels. Opposite to the town hall, the House of the King, where, despite the name, never there lived any king towers. Constructed in the 13th century, the house served serially as a warehouse for bakers, tribunal and prison. In 1873 the architect Victor Yammer reconstructed the building in style of a Gothic style. Today in the House of the King there is a municipal museum. Near the Grand Place/Grotto Markt is the well-known fountain, the Pissing Boy, a bronze statue 61 cs high. There is a set of legends of his emergence. It agrees one of them, 4 centuries ago one little boy saved us the city from the fire. Today the Pissing Boy, famous for the whole world, the owner of the clothes consisting from more than 800 dresses which are stored in the House of the King in the Municipal Museum. So, on birthdays of Mozart and Elvis Presley he is dressed up in the corresponding suits, and during the international matches Mannequin Piss tries on a form of the national team in soccer. Since 1987 the statue of the Pissing Girl, Mannequin Piss's Pandanus cost several streets further. In 1999 there was also Pissing Doggy, symbolizing combination of different cultures in Brussels. The Fountain of the Minerva, Jacques Berger's authorship, is quite beautiful. He is placed into Grand Sablin Square thanks to a testamentary gift of Lord Thomas Bruce, the second Count of Aylesbury and the third Count of Elgin, who thanked the city for hospitality which he received during the exile. Construction of cathedral is dated 1226. The general architecture includes elements of such styles as Romance, Gothic and the Renaissance. But nevertheless the prevalence of a Gothic style is noticeable. The facade consists of two towers, each 70 m in height, is decorated with carved spikes which uplift cathedral highly into the sky. Inside the building is lit with the soft light getting through high windows with stained glass windows of surprising purity. One of the main attractions and a symbol of the city is a tomb constructed to the World Fair of 1958. A tomb is in the north of the city near Laeken and represents the model of a crystal of iron 102 m high increased in 165 billion times. Indirect Ableise from a tomb, the Park of Miniatures Mini Europe with copies of the best known constructions of Europe in scale 125 is located. Also near Laeken there are 6 royal residences. Brussels is the homeland of comics. In the city such eminent masters of comics as Aussie, Andre Franquin and Maurice D. Bever, who created series of comic books about Tintin, Marsupilami, the Lucky Luke, Gaston and other characters who became popular around the world, created. Unique site of Brussels are the comics on walls of houses scattered on all city. The most known of them are brought together in the Guide of Comic Strip Route. The Belgian Centre of Art of Comics, located in the building built on Victor Ort's project in style of an Art Nouveau, stores a collection from more than 25,000 comic books, including about 400 original drawings of Aussie, and tells a story of comics from the origin up to now. 2009 is announced in Brussels Year of Comics. Between the top city with the Royal Palace, Parliament and the Palace of Justice and the lower city, the historic centre of Brussels with a town hall, houses and houses of handicraftsmen, located the Mountain of Arts built in the period of Bruxelization. Characteristic of this period became the massive geometrical forms of postmodernism expressed in architecture of Royal Library of Belgium and Congress Palace. From the top point of the Mountain of Arts it is possible to see the Grand Place, and in sunny day besides a tomb and to a Basil of Sacred Heart. Besides Royal Library on Go there is a complex of the museums and art galleries. Museum of Musical Instruments, Royal Museums of Fine Arts and others. Slightly above the Royal Palace, the Royal Park and the Palace of Academies are located. Halleport, the Palace of Justice, Royal Conservatory are available to visit too. In the city the French language Université Libre de Bruxelles, Nederlandskwizitchny Université Libre de Bruxelles, Catholic the University of St. Louis in Bruxelles, the highest school, the University of Brussels, Royal Academy of Fine Arts in Brussels, the Bruxelles Conservatory are located. Cultural life of Brussels is quite rich and various. Besides the museums and constant exhibitions, concerts and other cultural events as, for example, the celebration of Street Valentine's Day and International Women's Day, Year of Comics, concerts of world stars are periodically held. It is possible to get the cultural guide the current year with the schedule of all actions and the addresses of the museums, theaters, clubs and exhibitions. In 1993 and 2002 in the city there took place the World Cup in a semi-marathon. The Bruxelles capital region contains 80 museums, about a half of which are located directly in lines of the Commune Brussels. Besides the habitual art and historical museums, in Brussels there are such unique museums as Chocolate Museum and Cocoa, the Museum of Comics, the Museum of Beer, the Museum of Musical Instruments. Among art museums it should be noted Royal Museums of Fine Arts with an extensive collection of works of Flemish masters. There is a system of discounts for a visit of the Bruxelles museums, Brussels card granting the right for free visit of some museums and journey on public transport. Also once a year passes night of the museums. Belgium is considered the homeland of praline, French fries and the Belgian wafers, therefore these dishes are very popular through the whole country and in particular in her capital. Besides Fricket specializing in sale of French fries and snack bars with wafers, on city streets booths with delicacies, for example, grapes, nails and fresh seafood are located. Also in the neighborhood of Brussels special grades of beer are made. Bruxelles champagne and others. In total in the territory of Brussels about 200 restaurants are located, 8 of them are noted at least by 1 star in the Guide Michelin. 4 2-star and 4 1-star. The greatest number of restaurants is in the area of Maasnikov, Rue de Bouchers / Beenhoustraat Street. Also far. Write comments. Read comments. Interesting people will tell interesting stories. All of good mood and good luck.